This happened to me back in 2017. Basically, I'm fairly certain somebody tried to break into my grandparents' house on 2 separate occasions, and the more I think about it, the more I think it was probably the same guy. In February or March of last year, I was 18 and awake at around 10 p.m., FaceTiming my boyfriend. My grandparents' house has this wooden back door and a concrete porch with a plastic stable door attached. My grandfather is judicious in locking both every night and double-checking that they're locked for certain before going to bed. He's always weary that somebody might break in, even though we live in a very small rural town in Cornwall, England. I've never really questioned it though. It always seemed better to be safe than sorry after all. Growing up, he told me over and over again to always make sure the doors and windows were locked properly before going to bed. I used to forget though. The dog needed to piss, so I let him out into the garden, and apparently didn't lock either door before going back into the living room. To give you an idea of how the house is set out, it's living room, then entrance hall, the kitchen, and then the porch. I was sitting in a chair against the far wall of the living room with my back to the kitchen. The dog, a big dumb Rottweiler times Mastiff with severe arthritis, was really beginning to play up. He has these manic, excited fits sometimes where he'll run in circles around the living room, nipping at anyone and barking. This wasn't one of those though. I've never heard him be aggressive before, but he started making these long, low warning growls. It scared the absolute shit out of me. He took himself into the entrance hall. It's tiled and he likes to lay down there sometimes to cool off. I thought nothing of it at first, but only a scant few moments later, I heard this enormous sound. By now, I'm pretty sure it was our dog smacking into the kitchen safety gate as he leapt right the fuck over it, which he absolutely should not be able to do, considering it's put there to stop him being an asshole when we open the front door. I yelled at him, got up to see what he'd broken this time, and I swear, I actually felt my blood turn to ice. Both the wooden door in the kitchen and the door to our back garden were wide open. Because of the dogs my grandparents like to have, the garden is fenced with about 6 feet of wooden paneling, but fuck me if I was gonna go out and check to see if there was anybody out there. Dog at my side, I shut and locked the exterior and interior doors and stayed up, listening. The worst part was, when I had let the dog out earlier, I could have sworn that I heard something out there. Even worse, and something that still freaks me out. Owing to the way I was sitting compared to the layout of the ground floor, this person would have been right behind me before I even knew anything was wrong. Going home a couple of months ago, I'm at uni now, I was again sitting in the living room. It has large bay windows. At around 3 a.m., this guy just comes up to the front door and starts properly hammering on it. The dog again emits those very real warning growls and immediately gets up to where I'm sitting on the sofa. I've ordered food and had friends over real late at night. He does not act like this just because there's anybody at the door. He follows me up the stairs as I go to look out the bedroom window, overlooking the front garden. I opened the window and called out to the man. Apparently, he had a pizza delivery for us. I told him he had the wrong house. He didn't even have a food bag or anything with him. The only local pizza place is a Domino's, about 20 minutes away. This guy wasn't in uniform and didn't have any sort of vehicle with him either. Like I said, I was sure as hell he didn't have any food. He lingered around for a while after I told him he was in the wrong place. I didn't exactly realize how sketchy this whole thing was until it was finally over. Just thinking about it gives me a bad feeling. I think he and whoever managed to get into the kitchen might have been the same person. My grandparents live in a middle-class area that apparently experienced a string of robberies in the early 2000s. Sometimes I worry the guy might have been a dog fighter looking to steal Diesel. Dog theft with the intent to fight the stolen animal is a very real problem in Cornwall and England in general. Diesel is also a massive loudmouth and not exactly hard to miss. If that's the case, I hope their encounter with him will make them think twice before trying again. I've encountered my fair share of creepers in my 26 years. I posted another story of my first encounter when I was about 11. I've also had a string of encounters at work that I like to call adventures in waitressing. Perhaps I'll write about those another time. The following, however, was probably the most dangerous situation I've ever been in, where creepy strangers were involved. After work one night, a friend and I decided to run to the Walmart up the street together to grab a few things. This was a 24-hour Walmart in a not-so-great area, and not the kind of place any young woman wants to go alone at night. I was 20 at the time, and my friend was 19, both of us female. We take separate vehicles and park a fairly far distance from the entrance so that we're able to park right next to one another. Even though it was 10:30 at night, the place was still pretty busy, and we were definitely further from the entrance than we had wanted to be. At least we managed to park near a light, though. We were pretty satisfied with our spots and headed inside. After about 15 or 20 minutes, we have all our things. We managed to check out in a timely manner as well. Record speed for Walmart as far as I'm concerned, and we're already on our way. As we were approaching our cars, we immediately noticed a shady little hoopty of a car parked 2 spots down from mine, sitting in the open with 2 men leaning against the passenger's side. We continue as if nothing's wrong, smiling and chatting with one another, but our chatter has turned to, "You see these guys? Yeah. Okay, we're gonna leave as quickly as possible. I got your back." We say goodbye, but unfortunately I have to walk around to my driver's side directly in front of them. As I make my way around the back of my car, keys in hand, they both push themselves away from the car, and one starts making his way towards me. He yells out, "Hey baby, what your name is?" I ignore him and try to stick my key in the door. I miss. I take a breath and try again, but I continue to struggle with this lock. Meanwhile, the man is rambling on about how beautiful we are, and he and his friend want to take us to a party. If we would just get in their car, they would take us to a great place and hook us up. You know, because we're so fine and all. I'm starting to panic a little as he's getting closer, and continuously asking my name more and more aggressively. I finally get my door unlocked and open, and in frustrated stupidity, I tell him, my name is my name. And I'm leaving. I jump in the driver's seat and slam and lock the door. As I'm sticking my key in the ignition, the son of a bitch actually leans on my car and continues to harass me about this party through a cracked window. Now, in the summertime where I'm from, it gets incredibly hot even at night, and it's common practice to leave windows cracked for comfort. It's then when I realize it's some 90 degrees out, and this dude is wearing this long coat. The alarm bells are screaming in my head, but this dude is plastered to my car, and I'm not thinking straight. I ask him through the window crack to please step away from the vehicle. He continues to try and ask me questions, and tell me that my fine friend and I really need to get in their car. I had my mace in my hand, but the windows are manual, and if I tried to spray through the small crack, I would probably end up spraying myself more than him. I asked him nicely one more time to please back off, and when he didn't comply, I finally lost it and started yelling. "You need to get the fuck off my car, because I'm leaving with or without you on it, and I will run you over, motherfucker." As I throw my car in drive, he yells, "What the fuck you just say to me? Bitch, I'm about to fucking shoot you." He reaches into his long coat. My friend, who was sitting in her car next to me, trying to figure out what to do, guns it through the parking lot, and I follow after her. We drive across the lot without looking back until we find one of those security vehicles. We stop, and my friend jumps out and runs to his open window to tell him what just happened. He starts driving over to them, but they jump in their shitty car and take off. We left Walmart and drove to the parking lot of a McDonald's to talk and make sure we were both okay. We talked about the incident and came to the conclusion that they had probably chosen to wait by our cars, considering we had distinctly feminine indicators on them. I had Tinkerbell on my license plate and a matching sticker on my back window. My friend, who races motorcycles, had a big pink skin sticker across the back window of her truck. We were sufficiently freaked out and very glad we made it out of that situation unharmed. I don't think either of us have ever gone to a Walmart after dark since. Many people, when speaking of our society today, say that children are less safe than they've ever been before. Personally, though, I believe that no matter what year it is, we are always going to have horrible people running around on the streets. I think evil is just part of human nature. Maybe I read too many stories on this sub and others, but still, to all the parents out there, keep a close eye on your children. All of that aside, though, this particular encounter happened about 20 years ago today, when I was 3. My brother was a newborn at the time, and for financial reasons, my mom, stepdad, who later adopted me and became the man I consider my father, my brother and I all lived with my mother's parents. It was never a bad situation, but I think my mom grew frazzled quite easily, trying to raise 2 young children and also save up enough money for a house of her own. And that's why we spent most of our time at lakes and parks. Any sort of free activity that would wear us out, I believe. Back then, my grandmother was in pretty good health, and I remember she drove my mom, my new brother, and I to a small lake in Denver for a fun weekend trip. I don't know why I remember all of this information so well. Again, I was only 3 years old, but I was already dressed up in a pink bathing suit and was chatting animatedly about going swimming with my childhood teddy bear. That is until my brother started to fuss, and I plugged my ears to drown out all the noise. When we arrived at the lake, my grandma and mom were visibly exhausted from all the crying, and they quickly let me out of my car seat. They told me to wait by the car whilst they comforted and fed my little brother, and I obeyed as they disappeared around the other side. I was just watching the waves on the lake. I've always loved swimming, and fiddling with my bear, when these 2 guys approached me from across the parking lot. Again, I don't know why I remember this so well, but the men were fairly young, maybe early 20s. I think they were dressed in baggy jeans and hoodies. I think they were both Caucasian as well, if that matters at all. I was too, for that matter. I got this immediate stranger danger vibe from them, and I remember pressing myself up against my grandma's car, as though that would somehow provide me protection. I was a pretty cautious child already. This was not the first weird encounter I'd ever had with a stranger, but the instant terror I felt when these guys approached me caught me off guard. "Hey, little girl," one of the guys said, leaning down so he was in my face. "Do you want $1?" I didn't say anything, and my limbs froze up. I could not move, even when the other man pulled out a $1 bill. The first man spoke again. "It's okay, don't be scared. If you get into our car, we'll give you this $1. He started grabbing my arm, and I remember I started to cry. I was so scared that I couldn't move or make a sound, so my tears were silent. Now, don't cry, little girl. We'll give you this $1, the man said, and started to pull on my arm, dragging me towards a dirty white van that scared me even more. The other man started to tell me they were going to make me rich. I was going to earn more money than any other little girl should ever have, and I could buy any toy I wanted if I just went into the van with them. When we were about halfway there, I dropped my teddy bear, and that's when I let out an audible scream. The men didn't seem too concerned until my grandma came out from behind her car and charged the men. She was carrying a baby bottle from feeding my brother, and she used that to begin viciously beating them. After a few choice words I had never heard her use before or since, the men let go of me, and with dejected faces, ran to the van and sped off. After that, my grandma gave me my teddy bear back and carried me to my mom, where they calmed me down and called the police. After talking to me and wondering out loud how my grandma, a 72-year-old very tiny woman, just beat up 2 men. She even had some blood under her nails from scratching them. My mom and grandma decided it was best to just go home and try the lake again another day. I don't know if the men were ever caught, but I do sincerely hope so. Something tells me that whatever they wanted with a cute blonde 3-year-old girl was probably not very good. My grandma doesn't remember this story anymore. She has dementia now, but she'll forever remain a hero of mine. My mom and I like to tell it to her now, though, and remind her that she's the bravest, kindest woman we know. Again, this was some 20 years ago, but I would really implore any parents out there to always make sure your kids are safe. There will always be sick people out there, and that fact is not going to change ever, even with time. This was not the first time I was almost kidnapped, but it was definitely the most scared I've ever been. This happened about 6 years ago, but first, a little backstory. Back then, I was in university and lived about 10 hours away from my parents. It was a long drive, and our hometown was super boring, so I only ever visited for Christmas. That year, though, because I was going through a bad breakup, I went home for the summer, wanting to just be lazy and sunbathe in my parents' garden with some trashy novels. Luck had it that my cousin who lived next door was also alone visiting her mom. She was 2 years younger than me and close to me like a sister. My parents had a big dog, a cane corso if you know the breed, that looked quite scary but was a gentle giant and a surrogate mother to our kittens. Anyway, I was home for a couple of months and my parents were going on a holiday for 2 weeks on the other side of the country. I was okay with being home alone, although it was a bit weird because at this point I had been living in a big city for a few years and was not used to everything being so quiet at night. All I could hear were crickets and sometimes wild animals from the nearby mountains. It made it quite hard to sleep, so I decided to move into my parents' bedroom because they had a TV in there and I could keep it on all night for some background noise. One night my cousin came to spend the night because her mom was working the night shift and she didn't want to be home alone. We decided to watch horror movies and eat pizza in bed. At some point I fell asleep, but my cousin, Anna, could not. She was quite a jumpy and easily scared person, so those movies really got her freaked out. I'm deep asleep when she suddenly wakes me, super freaked out, saying someone is in the house. My mind is foggy because there was some beer with that pizza, and I could barely keep my eyes open. I told her she's being paranoid and she should go back to sleep. She insisted that there really was someone in the house. She's shaking and crying, so I'm starting to worry about her. I sit up when I suddenly hear a noise from downstairs, as if someone closed the cutlery drawer in the kitchen. I flinch and put the TV on mute. I get up and slowly lock the bedroom door, then tiptoe back to the bed and listen carefully. I hear the wooden floors downstairs creaking as if someone is walking around. At this point, I'm starting to join Anna in the freakout. My parents had this sensor light in the hallway. It's placed kind of in the middle of the stairs, so it will go on if someone is walking around both downstairs or upstairs. I hear the click of the light turning on, and I can see it from underneath the bedroom door. I'm now 100% sure someone is in the house. I grab my cell phone to call the police, but the town is in the middle of fucking nowhere, and I have no service. My cousin is bawling, and I have to put a pillow over her mouth to muffle the noise. She's holding on to the pillow and bites it to stop herself from screaming. Whoever is in the house is now climbing up the stairs. My mind is going 100 miles an hour, and I'm trying to think of all possible scenarios. My best bet is some neighbor noticed my parents' car has been gone for a few days. They know our dog is harmless, and they know my folks are doing quite well for themselves, so they were probably trying to find some jewelry or something. I figure if we keep quiet, they'll take whatever they want and then just go. I told my cousin to quietly get underneath the bed. I look out the window and see nobody on the street. Since my parents' bedroom is next to mine, and mine has a balcony, I figured if push comes to shove, we can climb out the window, reach the balcony, and since it's overlooking the vegetable garden, we can jump and hope to land on a soft soil that won't break too many bones. As I move to crawl underneath the bed as well though, the doorknob rattles. Someone is trying to get in. I freeze, and I swear time stands still. My heart is beating like crazy. I look around, and the only weapon I can see is my mom's crochet needle in a basket by the bed. I figure I'm gonna stab this sucker right in the eye or something. The doorknob rattles for a few more seconds, then the intruder walks away. I hear them shuffling through the rest of the runes on the floor, but I figure she's too quick to actually take anything. Worse thoughts creep into my head. My dad is a detective. He's worked some horrible cases involving sex trafficking rings and stuff. What if someone is here for him? Wouldn't be the first time our family was threatened. If that's the case, I might be dead by the morning. This thought shoots adrenaline through my body, and when I can't hear anything for a few minutes, I decide I have to get out of that room, find some service, and call the police. My cousin begs me to stay, but all I can think about is someone after revenge. They could burn the house down with us in it or something. As stupid as it might sound right now as well, I was really worried for my dog too. She was out there all alone. If someone was to approach her, she'd probably lick their fingers right before they shot her or something. Anyway, I take my phone, my crochet needle, and leave the room. I step into my parents' dressing room and take my dad's baseball bat, then make my way downstairs. The front door is wide open. As I walk outside, I can see a man swiftly running away. I immediately call the police, and to my surprise, they tell me a call was already made for that address. They're already on their way. I assume my cousin somehow found a way to call while I was gone, and so I don't question it. The police arrive in less than a minute. It wasn't my cousin who called, though. It takes us a while to understand just what's going on. The officer is just as confused as I am. In the end, what happened was, my neighbors were not aware I was home for the summer. They knew my parents were gone, and when they saw the lights were on in the house, they started to worry. I didn't lock the door that night, and my dog has the habit of opening it with its paws and then taking a nap on the sofa downstairs. Turns out she probably opened the door at some point in the evening, and then decided to go back out and left it wide open. My neighbor thought that someone was robbing us or something worse, so he came in and went into the kitchen to take a knife from the drawer and walked around to see if he could spot any intruders. He decided to call the police at some point, and when I got out of the bathroom, he heard me upstairs, got spooked about a robber, and ran away. So, worried neighbor who was stupid enough to go into the house while he thought it was actively being robbed in the middle of the night. Let's not meet again.